So, hello everybody, and very warm welcome. And earlier on, I managed to say hello, good morning to some of you individually. So, for those of you who just joined at past, then very warm welcome to each one of you. This today is the 34th session in our studies of the Mahayana Uttara Tantra Shastra. I said that last week. I got it wrong. It was the 33rd last week. This week is the 34th. Not that it matters. It's a lot. It's a big number. We still might finish before Christmas, I think, this text. Let's see how we get on. But anyway, today, let's start in the very, very best necessary and proper and wonderful way by reminding ourselves of our bodhicitta, by focusing on the bigger picture that, well, here you are, alive on planet Earth, in this body, in this life. It's a long story. It's one life amongst many, and one time or another, then we are going to really consolidate this bodhisattva trajectory towards enlightenment. It's like the adventure into outer space. We've probably been launched many times and had lots of experimental rockets, but this one's going to land, where it ought to land, and really be the game changer. And it's a question of quality rather than quantity when it comes to practice. It says very clearly in the teachings on karma that one intense moment of love, of motivation, of care, compassion, even though it's only a few seconds, can be enough to determine several future lives. So it really is a question of quality, which is why I always rattle on, and most teachers do rattle on at the beginning about the motivation when we do the prayers, so that we don't just do them mechanically, but we do them with all of our heart and with very, very noble intention. We take refuge in the Buddha, in the Dharma, and in the community of most noble minds. From this moment on until we reach the very heart of enlightenment, through our practice of generosity and all 6 transcendent virtues, may we reach total awakening and every enlightened quality to be able to truly help sentient beings so lost in samsara. May each and every one of those beings be well. May they live long, be healthy, be well provided for, have good friends, find respect, live in places of peace and plenty, and most of all, may they practice Dharma. May they each create the causes for those good circumstances to be their wealth in future lives. May they be free from their suffering and from creating causes of future suffering. May they discover the natural, sacred well-being totally beyond suffering and attain the great equanimity, free of closeness or distance from anyone. Deyata shame shamavati shameta shatru om kurimam kurimarajite karota kayorit kajovachi oloyani bishuddha nimale malapa naye kukure kaka grase grasana mukhi paramukhi hamukhi shamedavani sawa graha bandhanani nigri dva sawa bhava Pravadina vimukta marapasha savidva buddha mudra anutgatita sava mare putsarita parishuddhe Bigashantu Savamarakama. Glorious Guru, source of all blessing, ever present above our heads on lotus and moon seat, through your immense kindness, ever sustain us, that the accomplishments of body, speech, and mind flow from you, and we are one. So, as you know, then this text, the main body of this text, is in 7 main parts, and we are in this 6th part, which is about the qualities of enlightenment. Perhaps a better way of phrasing it than the qualities of an enlightened being, because the word being can be quite misleading in that sense. So this is the qualities of enlightenment. So if you remember, the previous chapter made it very clear for us what enlightenment is, the qualities of freedom, the qualities of maturity, and all the details of those. So now we're looking at, made clear what enlightenment is in terms of Vimuktikaya and the form kayas. So now we're looking at the qualities of those Vimuktikaya, the freedom, the purity, and the qualities of the form kayas, the manifestation to other beings. As I hope you know by heart by now, because I keep saying it, then there are 64 qualities mentioned here, which are the 10 powers, the 4 fearlessnesses, the 18 distinctive qualities, and the 32 very special marks of the Buddha. So up until now, we've looked at the 10 powers, the 4 fearlessnesses, and last time the 18 distinctive qualities. And today we need to move on to these 32 special marks of a Buddha. There are many, many special manifestations of the Buddha, and of course in Vajrayana, when we use these as methods of practice, then we find that there are hundreds, and according to the tantric teachings, I've not seen that many, but thousands of manifestations, forms of Buddha. Male, female, peaceful, wrathful, and so on, in many different ways. So here we're looking at the special marks when there is such manifestation. And a lot of people here, I think we're practicing Vajrayana, we're doing Chimrezig, Tara, one or another practice. Now, what is assumed, sometimes stated in the practice instructions, sometimes implicit, is that all of them have these 32 marks of the Buddha. And most people, if you learn to visualize Amitabha or Chimrezig or Mahakala or whatever it is, then it just says with the 32 and the 80 special signs, and people go with the 32, but they don't know what they are, of course, because very few people spend time. So even if you don't know them by heart, which would be useful if you're visualizing it, because how can you visualize if you don't know what it is? You're visualizing a blob with 32 special somethings, that you don't know what they are. But if you've got some idea, then it really helps. But there are endless special signs. These 32 are famous. They come from some texts. Other texts mention 80. In the introduction to this Buddha qualities section a week or two ago, I mentioned that these are also, they're found in the Theravada texts, they're found in the Mahayana texts, and I gave you the name of the Theravada texts in which they're found too. So the 32 special signs or the 80, then it's hard to find the right word. They're not lesser signs, although they're translated like that. They're not minor marks. It's just another list. So some of the 32 and the 80 kind of overlap, quite similar. Here we only look at the 32. Those of you who did my 3-year study course will know that the first module was an absolute bombardment of information. And in there you've got the 32 marks of the Buddha, the 80 special marks, and the 60 qualities of speech. So it was designed to put people off. If anyone can stick with that, they'll stick with the rest of the course. So rather than saving the bad news for later, it was kind of a test at the doorway. In the old University of Nalanda, people were only allowed in as scholars if they passed a test. So it was, I don't know if practically it worked like that, but you had to present yourself at the gateway and be examined to be allowed to go in. So anyway, here we're looking at the 32. Now, how to think of them, because we're ordinary people. I I don't really know, but I'm an ordinary person, and I'd imagine we've got at least some ordinary people here amongst us. So some things to ordinary people seem weird until they understand, and then they seem normal. We see this today with science. For thousands of years, the shortest distance between 2 points was a straight line. That's what we learned. Now, with physics and our understanding of space, the expanding universe, the shortest distance between 2 points is actually a curve. So if you said that a century ago, then people would think you were not quite right in the head. You said, no, it's not actually. In truth, it's a curve. You might even get locked up. Now, because it's in the science books and it's not the latest quantum physics, that's just old stuff. We've done this ages ago, 100 years ago. Now, of course it's a curve. And we've got a very good example of ordinary thinking with what they call so wrongly artificial intelligence, sort of artificial stupidity, more like it. But properly speaking, it's called machine learning, so that it gathers all the information. So if 95% of the information says it's like this, then it's like this. That's the conclusion. Doesn't allow for the 5% that could be right. I think one writer said, what was it? Excuse the language, but eat shit, 100 billion flies can't be wrong. So this is machine learning. It's based on everything, whether it's real research, people's ideas. It mines all the information that's out there and draws a conclusion. So we learn, and then what was extraordinary or impossible then becomes, just now science. Some people are saying quantum physics says now what happens in the present can influence the past, or, if you think linearly, that's not possible with linear causality, and so on. So what are these 32 special signs? Well, according to how we think in an ordinary way, you could say these are meditation experiences, so that when in meditation we do get the experience of the enlightened mind, this is how it appears. These are the things that are seen. You could go to another extreme of ordinary thinking. These, you could say, there's some of the hallucinations Buddhists have, when that happen to them. We could look at the activity of perception and how everything's projections, and these you could see them in that way. I made some notes somewhere, lost them, never mind. But there are various ways we could phrase this in ordinary thinking so that these special signs are understood. They are in fact something very, very sacred and special. If you have the experience of seeing one of these signs, it means you're seeing enlightenment or an enlightened being, which is already a very sacred space. And the meaning of each of these signs will impact you. And what we're going to look at today is not in the root text, the text we're studying verse by verse, but in the commentary, Jamgon Kongtrul's commentary, which tells us from the scriptures the karma on the bodhisattva path that gives rise, when there is the form kaya manifesting from your enlightened presence to the people you've made connection with. We see the karma that led up to those things. So if you have the living experience of seeing a Buddha, Nirmanakaya, Sambhogakaya, mainly Sambhogakaya in this case, then you will feel the sacredness. Nobody will need to tell you, you won't need to think about it, it will be there, just there, like the perfume of a very strongly scented rose. You don't need to do anything, you just smell it, it's there, very vivid, very strong. Or on another thing, pain, physical pain, it's there, just is what it is. Or some things are there without needing too much logic. I thought of a funny example for this morning. You don't seem to see so many these days. I remember when I was younger, every so often on the media or somewhere, you'd see people have made models out of matchsticks. Does that mean anything to anybody? You ever seen any of it? So you'd have a huge, sailing ship, a galleon, with all the details, the little cannons, the ropes, the mast, everything. And somebody had spent months, probably years, gluing together matchsticks to make all of this. So you don't need to really sit and think about it to know this is the result of a lot of work. As soon as you see it, you think, my goodness, somebody's day after day, month after month, maybe year after year has been gluing matchsticks, and you see the end result. This is really impressive. You might think it's a waste of time, but you're impressed by the amount of work and care and mindfulness that's gone into it. It's obvious no one could do that in a mindless, careless way. It's been a lot of very, very, very careful and clever work, making ropes out of matchsticks and so on. Amazing. So the obviousness of the Buddha's goodness, the Buddha's purity, the Buddha's wisdom on the path as a bodhisattva leading up to the enlightenment is felt deep, deep in your heart. It just is. And I think that's the most valuable thing I can say about this. So when we study the scriptures, we are studying what people whose meditation is good have experienced when they experienced the Buddha's Sambhogakaya, and that are sometimes experienced with the Nirmanakaya. So in the life of Buddha Shakyamuni, some people saw these signs, some people didn't, which is in itself gives us a lot of food for thought. because we tend to think as ordinary people, are they really there? Are they concrete, solid? Is every Buddha like that? And so some people experienced the Buddha like that, others didn't. And then if we take, for instance, the 16th Karmapa, his attendants who looked after him and who looked after his body in private, they said he had, for everybody to see 2 of these 32. And then if we take one of the signs is the aura of light around the body. So on a human level, where we can experience a bit of the Nirmanakaya, there's a very sweet little story from our present 17th Karmapa's sister, from before he was discovered and enthroned, when he was still a nomad. And she'd say at night time, she'd sit next to him to sew because she could see better. It's just a very kind of matter-of-fact thing of there was a bit more light around him than around everybody else. But these things can come through on Nirmanakaya, but that depends on the purity of the worldly being, somebody in the 6 realms, their own purity in general. But then sometimes it's just purity in the moment. Sometimes we get little wake-up moments because of our past life karma, and then we get a moment of very pure awareness that's quite inspiring. So anyway, I just wanted to say those few words before we look at this. So this is an easy section. It's a list. There's nothing too deep to understand once you've thought about what I've just described. So let's go to the book. And we've got 32 to go through. So we're on page 259 and verse 257, 8, 9, 260, 261, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So we start with a list of the 32 qualities without numbers. Then we'll go through them one by one according to the commentary. Perfectly level and marked with wheels, his feet are broad and his ankles not protruding. Long are his fingers and toes, webbed. Soft is his skin and fine his youthful flesh, his body having 7 elevated parts, like an antelope's are his calves, and like an elephant's are his private parts recessed. His torso is like a lion's, and his clavicle not hollow, but well filled, his shoulders elegantly rounded, soft and even are his arms. His arms are long, and his perfectly pure body is surrounded by an aura of light. His neck like a conch is rounded and without blemish, and his cheeks are like those of a king of beasts. Equal are his 40 teeth. They are very pure, closely set, immaculate and evenly aligned. The eye teeth are perfect and excellently white. His tongue is long, unending and inconceivable, possessing the most perfect faculty of taste. The spontaneously born has a voice like the song of the Kalavinka bird, or like Brahma's melody. The supreme beings has beautiful eyes like blue lotuses, and like an ox's are his eyelashes, with its immaculate white treasure hair. His face is handsome to behold, his head bears a mound, and his skin is pure, fine and golden. The hairs on his body are exceedingly fine and soft, one from each paw, and curling to the right and to the top. His hair is impeccable and like a deep blue gem, as well rounded as a perfect, and then we get a new sentence, as well rounded as a perfect Nyagroda tree, The ever-good and incomparable great sage has the strength of Narayana in his firm body. These 32 marks, vividly brilliant and beyond any concept's grasp, are taught by our teacher as those of the Lord of Men. So in here, everything's he and men. It's about the historical Buddha, Shakyamuni, who was male, but and it's very hard when you translate sometimes to use language that's neutral. You can't say its hair, because that doesn't quite sound right. like a Buddha is an it doesn't work. And then you've got he or she or, I don't know, there's probably a solution, but it's just to say here it's expressed in a masculine way. And that's mainly because of the English language. In the Tibetan, then there is a neutral feeling. So now we go on page 260 to these 32 one by one. First, the feet. They're very even. It means they're quite flat at the bottom and marked with Dharma wheels of 1,000 spokes. So that's one thing. People in meditation, if they look at a Buddha's body, they can see changing things. And it's like you look at the skin and it's skin, but then you look and it's like tattoos emerging, signs that are full of power. They can stay or they can come and go. And so when people look at the Buddha's foot, if his foot was where you could see the soul, they would see 1,000-spoked Dharma wheel. The reason the Buddha has that, or people see that in the Buddha's foot, it's the outcome of the Bodhisattva's proper taking and keeping of vows, commitments, as well as his or her respect for teachers and the gathering of much virtue. So this is what the Bodhisattva's path is about, of course. Taking, keeping the vow. When we study Bodhisattva vow, we know that you need to keep the Pratimoksha vows in order to not lose the Bodhisattva vows. And then we formulate it much more clearly in Vajrayana, but samaya to the teacher is very important, so respect towards one's gurus. And so through keeping the vows and respecting the teachers, very much virtue is accumulated, and then this results in that first special mark of the Buddha. Number 2, still the feet. They are broad and the ankles do not protrude. No bony ankles. So don't feel bad if you've got bony ankles. I think we've all got bony ankles. But when people see the Buddha, then the flesh around the ankle bone is more or less covers it. This is the outcome of, again, innumerable virtuous deeds. Number 3, the fingers and the toes, so the digits, if we talk technically, are long. This is the outcome of giving protection to beings who would otherwise have been killed. So part of Buddhist practice is in saving life and freeing animals, for instance, which are destined to be slaughtered and so on. Through saving life, then again and again, it results in people experiencing this sign. So, like I said, we've done 3 signs. So if you saw this, you actually saw it on Nimanakaya or in your meditation on the Sambhogakaya Buddha, you will be moved. you'd feel all the virtue behind it, just like when you look at the matchstick ships, you'd know all the work that was behind it. Number 4, still the hands and feet. These are slightly webbed. This is the outcome of former peacemaking. So, doesn't mean as webbed as like a duck's foot or an animal's foot, but there is at the bottom, I've got a free finger, but in between the fingers there's a slight web at the bottom. It's one of the curious things when people look at an enlightened being. They see that. Number 5 is the skin is very soft and the flesh fine and youthful. This is the outcome of former generosity to the poor and to the hungry. Now, this is something I've seen in Rinpoche's in the early days, in the 1970s of Samiling. We had a Lama, Khenpo Lamcho, who had become a Manipa. Khenpo is a Buddhist scholar and teacher, and then he'd left his monastery and all of that to spend all of his life doing Om Mani Padme Hum and leading thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of people in Tibet together to do 100 million Om Mani Padme Hums. When the 16th Karmapa came, he said, "You are incredibly lucky here to have Lama Lacho. He's a bodhisattva, has attained bodhisattva levels." Now he was well into his 70s, but his arms and if you touched his arm, it was sacred. It was a sacred experience. It wasn't just like soft and tender and like the flesh and the skin of a 20-year-old. There was something amazing. It was a blessing to touch his skin. So these signs do come through in very good teachers. Number 6, the body has 7 elevated parts. So it means nicely, convexly curved. The back of the hands, feet and shoulders, so the 2 hands, the 2 feet, the 2 shoulders are nicely rounded, and the nape of the neck, the back of the neck. This is the outcome of giving food and drink to the needy. Number 7 are the calves, that part of the lower leg, are like those of an antelope. So don't take it literally. I mean, an antelope, they've got very sort of skinny, bony, but it means they are very beautiful to look at. If you look at an antelope and see how some animals have got very nicely proportioned, like a gorilla's chest, It's kind of, wow, that's a chest, And when you see an antelope's legs, they are so elegant, so beautiful. They're strong, solid, and muscular. This is the outcome of a thorough mastery of all 5 branches of Buddhist learning. So like all of these things, they're endless. So what are the 5 branches of Buddhist learning? And then we go, we're looking, if we go back to the old universities like Nalanda and Vikramashila, then the syllabus was in 5 main areas. So we're looking at those. That's a big topic. It's a very favorite topic of Tai Situpa. And I think in a couple of his books, he develops them, and he develops their inner meaning as well, their outer sense, and the inner meaning. It's worth checking out. Number 8 is about his sexual organs, private parts, are recessed like those of an elephant. So it means that they're not, you say, sticking out. They're kind of concealed by folds of skin. They're secret. And this is the outcome of always maintaining confidentiality. I must say, my own Dharma journey, this is something I've come to appreciate so much. And those of you who are either involved in teaching Dharma or in therapy as well will know just how hard it is to maintain confidentiality and how important it is. And before you become a totally enlightened Buddha, like we're looking at now, the ability to maintain confidence and not even tell your best friend or somebody else who you trust to keep it quiet. They usually can tell other people that they trust to keep it quiet, But when somebody confides in you and it stops there, the outcome of that life after life, as we become bodhisattvas, is that people will feel they can trust you. They'll have this natural, and people felt this about Akon Rinpoche. So many people would say that, I trust him. And so it's not an easy, and the opposite of that is gossip, and this need to share. And it's very hard to keep people's secrets to yourself. Sometimes their secrets are about a lot of pain, or can be all sorts of things. And it's somehow on a human level a relief to share them. But whether that does any good or not is another thing. Sometimes it might be needed. If you are helping somebody, you might need to ask somebody who's more experienced, who can help you help them. You might need to refer up to a greater source. But in general, it's a wonderful thing that what somebody confides in you stops here, and you don't even share it with your closest people. So anyway, the outcome of that is this particular quality of the private parts. His torso is like that of a lion, meaning it's broad and majestic. This is the outcome of looking after other beings with great ethical care. When we do have the wonderful responsibility of helping others, and especially of guiding them, then that's where ethics becomes very important. When we do study the 6 paramitas, when we study generosity, the 3rd type of generosity is giving Dharma. And so that's why when we move on to the 2nd paramita, right conduct, we need to share Dharma, teach Dharma with the greatest of purity and ethical care. Number 10 is about the clavicles. So the clavicles, it's here. So they are not hollow, but well filled with flesh. This is another outcome of past life generosity, especially that of giving medicines to the sick. So again, if you've got very hollow clavicles, don't feel bad, By the time you're enlightened, they'll fill up and people will experience you like that. Number 11, the tops of the shoulders have elegant curves. So before we saw in number 6, 7 elevated parts, so they're elevated, but now they're not just elevated, they are beautiful. So they are very elegant. Yeah. Maybe I don't need to explain so much, but I like to explain, and sometimes it's helpful. So if you look at physique, if you look at these, like bodybuilding physique, what they call it, Mr. Universe, Miss Universe, where people have got these just amazing muscles, it's, to my mind, one of the ugliest things in the world, because they look like an anatomical, that's the word, anatomical. It's like when you take the skin off and you see the muscles and the veins and so on, they've got kind of, but for some people that's kind of, how can you say, the ultimate human physique. And then you get things like Bruce Lee. I don't know if you know Bruce Lee, the martial artist. He's got very nice muscles and, smooth skin. If I ever had a beautiful body and did that kind of work, I'd like to have a body like his. So that's elegant. It's both strong and elegant. And, so that kind of, now we're looking at the tops of the shoulders, so beautiful. And please imagine you actually have a meditation experience of a Buddha and you see the tops of the shoulders. It's like fascinating. How can it be so? It just looks so perfect. You can't stop looking at it. It's wonderful. You don't know why, but there's something. So the why is the outcome of right speech, which eased the fears and the worries of others and only used kind and appropriate words. That's why it's so fascinating and beautiful and wonderful to behold. Number 12, the arms are soft, round, and even. This is the outcome of always being a friend for beings. 13 is the arms again. They are long, the hands reaching down to the knees. So afterwards, you're going to go to a long mirror and see how far, when you stretch your arm by your side, how far down it goes. So the arms are long. This is the outcome of always striving to fulfill others' expectations. Number 14, the whole body is surrounded by an aura of light. This is the outcome of relentless effort to practice the 10 virtues. There's a very funny thing from Buddha's cousin, Devadatta, if you know the story of the life of Buddha. His cousin was jealous, I suppose is the word of the Buddha, envious. But his cousin was somebody who was a very special being, a huge past. So at the time of Buddha, there were, in terms of siddhis, special physical powers and so on. Then Buddha was the strongest. His cousin Devadatta was second, and his nephew Ananda was the third. If I may interrupt to tell a story, because these lists are long, and it's just, how can you say, my impression, right? But I had the privilege of, for a couple of months, of traveling with Gyaltsab Rinpoche as his interpreter. 4 months, I think, 4 months altogether I spent with him. And so in the Gyaltsab biography, because he's the 9th Gyaltsab incarnation, it says that before the 9 Gyaltsabs in Tibet, if you go back, he was this in India, and Ananda at the time of Buddha. And once he was telling me about Devadatta and a story, but the funny thing was, first he started talking as a story, but once he got into it, he was back there. He got really excited and he's describing how it is. And then at the end, when the story was finished, he kind of realized, and he suddenly became very serious and we were right back down to earth. But he told the story of the Buddha was walking with his cousin Devadatta, who was at the time part of the Sangha, and his nephew Ananda. They got to a village, and an elephant had died in the village. Now, a dead elephant in a village isn't good news, because it's a really heavy thing to shift. It's rotting, it's smelling. So they saw these wonderful beings, and they asked Buddha, can you remove it some way? And Buddha said, well, I don't know how he said it, but let's have a bit of fun. And he said, Ananda, can you move it? So Ananda sort of did whatever people with special powers do, took a deep breath, and he kind of pushed it, and he could push it a bit, but it was really an effort. So that's not bad already, being a human who can push an elephant, dead elephant along. So then he said to Devadatta, now you try. And Devadatta, who was much more special powers, he managed to shift it a couple of meters. So he really he could have, with a lot of effort, he could have taken it away into the jungle. And then Buddha said, now, I show you. And he puts his big toe underneath the elephant and flicks it, and the elephant flies through the air and lands in a very remote part of the nearby jungle. And so, problem solved. But anyway, for me, that was an amazing experience, because I felt like I'd time traveled. I'd gone back to Dharmacharya Rinpoche to when he was Ananda, and the whole feeling of Buddha's presence and Devadatta as a real somebody, not just a jealous cousin, but a real huge spiritual figure. And so anyway, Devadatta eventually, he didn't have all the signs that the Buddha had, these 32 signs we're looking at. Eventually he made a split in the Sangha. He wanted, and so people followed him. At the beginning, more people followed him than stayed with the Buddha, because he was very convincing. He was a very good talker. It's a marvelous story, this, because it shows us in Dharma, there are some people, some Rinpoches, who are really good talkers. They come up with amazing examples and images. So let's not name any names, but some of them are really good. And Devadatta was like that. He was good, excellent communicator for the people. And so anyway, he made a split in the Sangha. So when that split had happened, at one point, he made this statement. I don't see what people see in the Buddha. I mean, apart from that light around his body all the time, there's no difference between him and me. So this is in the scriptures as a quote from Devadatta. Apart from that light that shines around him all the time, there's no difference between him and me. So that's what we're looking at here. Surrounded by an aura of light. So this is the outcome of the 10 virtues, is the light of all the past virtuous deeds of body, speech and mind. Number 15, the neck is very beautiful and immaculate. It's like is compared to a conch shell. And this refers to the 3 fine lines on the Buddha's throat to the spirals of a conch. They are signs of the Buddha's perfect ability to teach all 84,000 aspects of Dharma. They are also a specific outcome of serving the sick and providing them with medicines. Number 16, the cheeks are magnificent, like those of a lion. This is the outcome of never wasting the power of speech through useless chatter, but instead of always using speech to guide people into what is good and wholesome, particularly Dharma. Number 17, he has 40 teeth, 20 on each jaw. Now, my in-laws were all dentists, and they said, this is impossible. Humans don't have 40 teeth. So, Buddha has 40 teeth. That's when people see Sambhogakaya, they see 40 teeth. There's just a possibility that linguistically this is a rounded up number. It's like in French. For a fortnight, you say une quinzaine de jours, 15 days. Right? But there aren't 15 days, there are 14. But that's what you say. I see you in une quinzaine de jours. So just linguistically, it could be that. There's quite a bit about the teeth. So if you've got bad teeth, don't worry, you're not Buddha yet. So these teeth are again beautiful, fascinating, perfect. So this is the outcome of treating everyone with equal kindness, as if each one of them has been one's former parents. It's also the result of overcoming harsh speech. Number 18, teeth again are very white, beautifully aligned. This is the outcome of always speaking truthfully and speaking in a way that creates harmony. Number 19, teeth again, they are immaculate and evenly aligned. So it means when people see the Buddha speaking, they're not going to see bits of spinach and rice in between the teeth. And they are, or see uneven teeth. They are without mark or defect and very harmoniously aligned as far as their length is concerned. So they make like a perfect dental shape. This is the outcome of giving away possessions and of gaining a livelihood honestly. In particular, the eye teeth, which we also call the canines, are perfect and brilliantly white. This is the outcome of former physical, verbal, and mental actions being perfectly honest and straightforward. This is a big one. I mean, really, these teachings about the 32 marks are also a wonderful teaching on what the Bodhisattva path is and what we need to become enlightened. We get a list of so many of the things. And this being straightforward means, let's do a double negative, not being unstraightforward, which means having an agenda, having a personal agenda. So that here we're looking at dealings with other people. They're always honest and WYSIWYG. This phrase from computers, what you see is what you get. There's no hidden agenda, what the Buddha says. You can trust, that's it. And so, one thing we do a lot as we are training to become bodhisattvas, as we become mindful and aware of our own speech and interactions with others, is we realize more and more the self-interest. We either want to get something or simply want to paint ourselves as better than we are, or whatever it is. There's a psychological agenda. So this getting rid of a self-centered agenda is a big part of the reality of our mind work. First, we need to become aware of it, which is a journey in itself. So many people, when they practice Dharma, they come to their teacher and say, Rinpoche, I think I'm getting worse. Since I started practicing Dharma, I seem to, I've got more jealousy, I've got more anger, I've got more of this. And in fact, what they're doing, because they're becoming more mindful, more aware, is they're starting to see what was always there, that either they didn't see before, or they were covering up with a beautiful story of how good I am. That can happen. So this perfect honesty and straightforwardness gives us these eye teeth. Number 21, the tongue is long, unending, and inconceivable. So now we're in the world of meditation experiences, vision. As I mentioned last week or the week before, with the Buddha's head mound, we make a mound on statues. But actually the experience people had looking at the top of the Buddha's head, in fact, they could never see the top of the Buddha's head. They would look up and up and up and up. And it's like a hallucination. Let me give you a silly example, okay? Ken example to, like you say, brighten up the talk, okay? Popeye cartoon. There's a Popeye cartoon where Popeye comes across a tent. And I think in the tent there's a very rich Arab. And so the tent is just an ordinary tent from the outside. And when Popeye puts his head inside, so you see his long neck stretch and his head goes inside, it's an endless palace with carpets and chandeliers and lots, like acres going on. And he pulls back his head and then his long neck twists all the way around the tent to see that it's just, 2 meters long. Then it goes back inside to see this huge extent. Can't make it out. Okay. So I hope that helps. When people try and see the top of the Buddha's head, they can't. Even if they've got divine vision and they can see up into the realms of the gods, it just seems to go on and on and on and on. So this is about the tongue, which also gives that impression, unending. This is because the Buddha can declare the profound meaning of voidness. And it's the outcome of speaking sweetly and softly. 22, the Buddha's faculty of taste. Everything Buddha eats has the most exquisite taste. This is the outcome of always providing solutions which were agreeable to beings and that worked, finding effective answers to their problems that worked for them as well as worked in themselves. Number 23, the voice of the Buddha is as sweet as that of a Kalavinka bird or as the voice of Brahma. This is the outcome of always speaking in a pleasing, peaceful voice that proclaimed the truth in a way which was relevant and meaningful to beings. So we've had one thing there about speech. In other places we get the 60 qualities of the Buddha's speech. Sometimes that's very poorly translated as the 60 tones of the Buddha's speech, as though it's just a musical quality. It's not. There are 60 special qualities of Buddha's speech. Next, the eyes, 24. The Supreme Being has beautiful eyes like blue lotuses. Of course, he was in India, in central India. Most people there have brown eyes. The Buddha's eyes were blue, like beautiful blue lotuses. This is the outcome of always looking upon other beings with the loving concern of a mother for her only child. That's beautiful. Again, don't worry if you've got dark brown eyes, I've got dark brown eyes, but I've got many lives to come until I'm Buddha and manifesting to people with blue eyes. Again, the eyes, but now the eyelashes are as handsome as those of an ox, long and beautiful, and very neatly separated, not glued in little bunches. This is the outcome of overcoming anger and hypocrisy in dealings with others. Number 26 is a special thing of the Buddha. It's a white treasure hair. It's a single hair here in between the eyebrows, and it's curled very, very tightly in a clockwise way. So most people don't have that. It says that if you, I don't know if anybody ever did it with the Buddha Shakyamuni, but that if you took the end and you pulled it, it would extend for several meters in front of the body. So that's all curled up very, very tightly here. I got very excited once. I had a little white hair that started growing, but then it fell out. So I don't know what that means. But anyway, it's one of the very special signs of the Buddha. When we come to some of the Mahayana sutras, like I think in the Lotus Sutra is one of them, then it's got an amazing beginning, the Lotus Sutra. It's there's the Buddha, and then it says, then assembled with the Buddha, you get a whole list of so many bhikkhus, and then the nagas, the dragons, there's so many devas in the deva realm, and so then you get this long list, and then the Buddha starts to take his position and sit on his seat to give a teaching. And then it said, at that point, quite a lot of the bhikkhus left. They put their robe neatly over the shoulder, they bowed, which is what you do, and then left the room because they thought they'd heard it all before, they'd heard everything that was to be said. When they were all gone, then from this is called treasure hair, urna means treasure in Sanskrit. Many lights of all different colors and white lights started spiraling out. And as they spiraled out, then everybody who was left saw the whole universe transformed. They were no longer in whatever place they were in India. They could see worlds upon worlds and deva realms and so much. And then that's when the Buddha starts to give the words of the Lotus Sutra, which show how, even though there are many ways, it's all one vehicle. It's a wonderful text. Please do read the Lotus Sutra. And there are quite a few translations. I particularly like the translation by Senchu Murano. It's very, very good. So point 26 is actually about the whole face with the white treasure hair. The Buddha's face is very clear, handsome and radiant. Those who see it are incredibly moved by its great beauty. So the treasure hair is more than 1 meter long, white and curled in a tight swirl on the brow. This is often represented by a simple dot on the Buddha's forehead in paintings and statues. These signs are the outcome of always treating special beings, such as other bodhisattvas, with respect. 27, the head is adorned with a mound. In fact, those who look at it can never see the upper part, so we've talked about that. And so this is the outcome of devotion and service to gurus and other teachers and bodhisattvas while he was a bodhisattva on the path. And even in his last life as Shakyamuni, Siddhartha, then he starts his spiritual journey by going to the best gurus of his time. He studies with them, he practices, then he equals them or surpasses them, and that's why he leaves them. So even in his very last life, when he was already enlightened, he set that example of going to other teachers and showing them every respect. Number 28, his skin is pure and fine. So now it's the skin. This is the outcome of always striving to do good and to make the mind flexible and manageable. I remember Akon Rinpoche saying to so many people, your mind is too rigid. And so learning to be more flexible of mind is also part of our training. Number 29, the skin has a golden hue. This is the outcome of always serving the Buddhas and making offerings to them. Number 30, the tiny hairs on the body are exceedingly fine and soft, one in each pore, spiraling to the right and upwards. This is the outcome of always meditating to make the mind manageable and make the mind applicable to all tasks, as well as applying diligent effort in bringing those tasks to a proper conclusion. So these hairs on the body, in some of the texts, and it's also something that we're asked to visualize when we do certain practices, then you can take a microscope and go down into a world beyond our vision. And then you can take other tools and go all the way down to a sort of an atomic level. Sometimes it says when you go down and you like totally into one of these pores with the hair coming out of it, very pure, then inside there's a whole Buddha field. So each of the Buddha's pores of the body has a whole Buddha field, sometimes. Number 31, Buddha's hair is impeccable and like a deep blue gem. So this could have originally meant that his dark hair had a beautiful blue sheen, like dark sapphire. And you see this in some Orientals' hair. It's kind of blue, it's kind of black, very black, but somehow there's a blue sheen to it. So it could have meant that sometimes on statues the hair is painted very, very blue, and that never looks right to me. When you've got this sort of bright blue hair, like sometimes people, not just ladies, people make their hair bright green or bright purple or green and purple, and beauty is a subjective thing, but it don't look natural. I mean, you can't say it looks natural because there's nowhere on the planet with people who've got, bright purple and green hair growing out their heads. So whether the Buddha actually had blue hair, I think it means this beautiful blue sheen is like beautiful. So anyway, whatever the reason, it's the outcome of always acting with loving kindness. Another, number 32 is about the whole body in general. It's beautifully proportioned. So the example in India amongst the trees is the Nayagrodha tree. Nayagrodha tree is beautifully proportioned, and the body exudes strength. So Narayana is one of the gods. He's one of the, youthful gods who's incredibly strong. Narayana, another name for Vishnu. All these marks shine with their own radiance and steal away the mind of the beholder with their beauty, their sense of profundity, making one know that one is in the presence of the supreme of beings, in the presence of something beyond the grasp of one's mind. They were taught by Buddha himself as being the signs of an enlightened one. Although some other great beings have several signs similar to these, at least in description, they are not the same, and neither are they the complete set of the 32 marks. Page 264, verse 266. Now we have an example. Just as the form of the autumn moon in a cloudless sky is seen in the azure waters of a lake, so are the formkayas of the all-embracing one, seen by the victor's children, the bodhisattvas, bodhisattvas, in the perfect Buddha mandala. So in this example, the moon, the real moon, is the actual Buddha. The lake is the very pure mind of the bodhisattva. And the way the Buddha manifests is like the reflection of the moon in unruffled water, which is a very, very, very famous Buddhist image, of course, because what you see in the water isn't the moon, but it perfectly conveys the moon. If you think optically and of little clouds, it could be possible that given where the moon is, you can't see the moon because of a cloud, but you can see the reflection of the moon in the water of a still lake. That would be a very good example, because even those who can't experience the Buddha in Buddha's totality and perfectly can nevertheless have a perfect expression of the Buddha through these experiences of seeing the Buddha's 32 marks. And indeed, perfect expression is the translation of Sambhoga. You know, Sambhoga Kaya means the Kaya, the aspect of perfect expression. So it's how Buddhas appear in the pure meditation of bodhisattvas. That experience conveys so much of Buddha's qualities, purities, past karma, and so on. But what they are seeing is not the real Buddha, because the real Buddha is beyond form. As we've seen many times in this text, the real Buddha is Svabhavika Kaya, Dharmacharya, formless. It is wisdom. Wisdom has no shape or color. And compassionate love has no shape or color. And power to help beings has no shape or color. So the real Buddha is perfectly represented in the minds, particularly of bodhisattvas. So there is this example. Remember, we had the example of the lion for the fearlessness. So now, next point, verse 267. Verse 266, I didn't read. Just as the form of the autumn moon in a cloudless sky is seen in the azure lake, waters of a lake, also are the form kaya of the all-embracing Buddha seen by the victor's sons in the perfect Buddha mandala. Verse 267 is the source of all of these. One should know that these 64 qualities, because we've come to the end of the 64 now, and their respective causes here follow their order in the jewel discourse, the Ratna Sutra. A note in the commentary by Control, there are some slight variations in the descriptions of the 64. Here they are presented following their order in that sutra, the Ratnadarika Sutra. Page 265, we get a reminder. This is typical structure in this text. We get it in brief, we get the expanded details, then we get a summary, a reminder to look back. So, verse 268, being invulnerable, undisheartened, peerless and unmoving, they are illustrated by the example of a Vajra. The 10 qualities of wisdom are invulnerable, like a Vajra. A lion, the 4 fearlessnesses are never disheartened, like a fearless lion. Space, the 18 distinctive qualities, they are peerless, and the clear moon in water is unmoving. However, different bodhisattvas experience in their minds the reflection of the changeless Buddha mind, the Buddha mind itself, which gives rise to the various reflections in the different lakes, is unchanging, unmoving. Then we get on page 265 a further discussion of these examples. So Ken is rushing, thinking he might just finish the chapter today, right? Which would be a neat thing to do. So this is, again, looking back and reflecting. So it says, it is in several parts. First, the qualities of freedom. Vimuktikaya, literally. Vimuktikaya, qualities of freedom, also known as Dharmakaya or Svavavikakaya. Verse 269, of these, 6, 3, and 1 powers have completely dispelled, respectively, what is cognitive, meditative balance, and those accompanied by latent conditioning. So when we look back at enlightenment, we saw its purity was one of the big things about it. Its purity and its power to help others was the other big thing. Its purity. Then we see its purity because it's free from 3 things, 3 impurities. The cognitive obscuration, this is in the verse, cognitive, the obscurations to meditative balance, and then the karmic and klesha obscurations, including latent conditioning. So that's the 3 veils, or the 3 veils, the 3 obstacles. So we're looking at the purity. So the 6, 3, and 1, the 10 powers, but we looked at them in terms of the first 6 being beyond the cognitive obscuration, the next 3 being beyond the obstacles to meditation, and the 1 being beyond karma. So it says, thus they have pierced, destroyed, and felled those which are like armor, pierced the armor, destroyed the walls, and felled the trees. Being firm, enduring, steadfast, and invulnerable, these powers are like a Vajra. So it's reminding us what we already did in that earlier section. We said the powers are like a Vajra, and we're seeing, so this Vajra, this weapon, it can get them in the right order, pierce the armor. Have you got armor? Ego's defense mechanisms, right? That's the armor, right? This Vajra, Buddha's teaching, Buddha, its presence, pierces this very well constructed armor of ego. It destroys the walls. So these are the blockages we have in meditation. Blooming nuisance. You want to sit down and just do what the practice says, and all this other stuff comes up. Distractions of all sorts. So that's like a wall keeping us out of where our mind should be going. The Vajra smashes the wall and we can break through. And then it fells the tree. The tree is the example for karma, and what causes karma, the kleshas, and what causes the kleshas, ignorance. It's like a tree, it grows from a root and it gets a trunk and branches and tiny branches and leaves and so many complex things. That's us. We've become, through our karma, such a complex thing. So the Vajra doesn't bother taking it apart, leaf by leaf, little branch by little branch. Crash! The whole tree comes coming down. So that's the 10 powers. And then verse 270, and then so it says, being firm, enduring, steadfast and invulnerable, these powers are like the Vajra. So that's developed. It's a bit technical, this. I don't think we spend time on it. Why are they firm? Because they're enduring. Why are they enduring? Because they are steadfast. Why are they steadfast? Well, because they're invulnerable. And why invulnerable? Because they are like a Vajra. So in this verse, we're looking at the second main quality of a Vajra, Indra's weapon. First quality was it can destroy anything. So we've seen how it destroys all the obstacles. And now in this verse, it cannot be destroyed. Enlightenment, Buddha's mind, cannot be damaged by anything, cannot be corrupted by anything, cannot be slightly spoiled or diminished by anything at all. And there is a reason here. I think if we looked into the logic behind that reason, we'd have a whole session. It goes a long way. Now, verse 272, we look at the 4 fearlessnesses. Being fearless, unconcerned and stable and possessing skill supreme, the lion of humans, the triumphant one, is likened to a lion because Buddha is fearless in the midst of any gathering. Having definite knowledge of everything, the enlightened one remains absolutely fearless of anyone, seeing clearly that even purified beings, bodhisattvas in the 10 levels, are not their peers. They remain uninfluenced. Since their noble mind is continually attentive to each and every phenomenon, it has stability. Having transcended the state of latent ignorance, so difficult to transcend, they possess mastery. So those verses develop now the lion as the example of fearlessness. And they explain 4 qualities of it. The fearlessness itself, the fact that it's unconcerned with other people's projections, its stability, and then number 4, its skill. So this is looking back what we saw, what we remember here. You can read in the text. And it says, they know without any confusion that they know. Not just know now, but they know everything about the past and the future. So their fearlessness itself is because of total knowledge. That's the fearlessness itself. Second one, they're unconcerned about other people's opinions because they still see the confusion of all the other beings, the bodhisattvas, even if it's very subtle. So they're not concerned with what even bodhisattvas, they're not concerned that they might find a better idea or find some fault in their teaching. So that's hence the image of the lion. Each time it's, why a lion? Don't think real lions are quite so good as they are in the legends, but well, that's the way it goes. Third point, the stability of their fearlessness based on wisdom is it's stable, it's spontaneous, which means it doesn't depend on any causes and conditions. That's non-dependence on causes and conditions is why it's stable. It's spontaneous. It doesn't depend at all on the intellect, on deduction or opinion. It's innate to the Buddha mind itself. And then the last point, skill. The enlightened ones are always more skillful in teaching. They can outclass any other scholars, meditators, and so on. To understand this properly, when we look into the Bodhisattva path, then we see 80 qualities of the Bodhisattva that we develop on the path. One of those qualities is called mastery. So we look at what is there to be mastered. How do you master it? What's the outcome of that in terms of you and other beings, you and other spiritual beings, you and other bodhisattvas, you and siddhas of other religions, and so on. So mastery is one of the 80 topics of the Bodhisattva path. So I think rather than rush it, let's stop there. We have just a few verses to finish this section. So let's finish it nicely next week in our next session, and just now dedicate anything that was good and useful to everybody's welfare. May whatever virtue was created by our session contribute to the state of omniscience being attained, by the main enemy, our mind's defilements, being completely defeated. Through that, may each and every sentient being become freed from the ocean of existence, troubled by its waves of rebirth, aging, sickness, and death. May this precious bodhicitta arise in those in whom it's not arisen. May its development know no setbacks, and may it increase ever more and more. Through this virtue, may we quickly achieve Mahamudra and establish every single sentient being in that same accomplishment. Oh, thank you very much. And it's over to you now for your comments or your questions. Or even your feedback about how these, now we've gone through these 32, how that strikes you. Chris, yeah.
Yeah, Ken, that was a really good set of explanations and going along with the text too. That's been very helpful. Thank you. I suppose the question I have with this is how useful it is to take it too literally. It seems to me that Well, my feeling about it is that it's a lot of useful reminders given a form, a bit like a visualization, but um, to try and see it too literally might be unhelpful. That's just my feeling at the moment. What do you think?
Um, well, I think when we went through the text explaining each of them, I think if you spend a bit of time with each, then how can you say, the analogy falls away, like the antelope, or chest like a lion, or then I think it is useful, because we're going to be visualizing, if you're in Vajrayana, Buddhas anyway, right? So then, how do you visualize them? And so, what are the shoulders like? And so, what is a lion's chest like? You got to look at a lion and sort of see lions walking along with it, and they've got this big torso compared to the end of their body, which is much slimmer, and that feeling of an impressive chest. So, if you're in front of the Buddha, or if we're visualizing, Vajradhara, Buddha Vajradhara. When you're visualizing and you're looking at this blue Buddha's chest and holding the Vajra and the bell, wow, that chest is that's quite a chest. You've got from the 32 signs, you've learned that. And then when we're visualizing, we move up, then Vajradhara's shoulders. How accurate is your visualization? Are we actually seeing shoulders when we visualize Vajradhara? Or is there kind of a blue something there that we call Vajradhara? So if we want to make Vajradhara more present and learn to meditate in a less distracted way, then we focus on the details. So then Vajradhara's shoulders so nicely rounded, and then we think, what does that mean from a past life? And then if you visualize Vajradhara's mouth, and normally the images of the mouth are shut, but Vajradhara's not an image. I remember in a retreat once, the retreat master told the retreaters, he says, your Vajrasattva needs to get up and do some jogging. And so what he meant was, although we've got in the tonkas or the statues a fixed image, we have to imagine something that moves. These days with AI, they take an old photograph. Have you ever seen this? And they make it into a little film where all of a sudden the people are walking along the street, the horses are moving. It's quite amazing when you see. I don't like AI in general, but with that, I must say it's very impressive. So our visualization of Vajrasattva or Vajradhara needs to be as though there is a being who can get up, who can walk, who can turn around, can look like this, can look like that, can look at you, can say hello, goodbye, can smile, can be wrathful, and alive, dynamic, not just a statue, it's like that all the time. So when we see Vajradhara, normally with the mouth shut, if Vajradhara starts speaking to us, then we're going to see these beautiful teeth. And we're going to, that's amazing. And those teeth and all of that coming from speaking so truthfully, without an agenda and so on. That's what we feel when we are visualizing. So I think it is useful. I think it's helpful to anybody who's visualizing.
I think I've just had another thought, actually, that kind of converse to what I said earlier, maybe, that perhaps it can also be used as just a kind of reminder, just looking at when we see our own bodies on a daily basis, just linking, thinking about some of these qualities and actions. It kind of gives you an anchor to link it to. You see your hand, and think about those qualities and a reminder to help other people or whatever the specific thing was, or to speak kindly and so on. And that's just another thought that comes to mind about using these in a very, I suppose, practical, everyday level to kind of
Yes,
help
an
keep on
affirmative
track.
level. And
Yeah.
because, Buddha is what we really are. Deep inside, we are all Buddha. So, however, I've got an old body falling apart. But, when I look at it, I can think who I really am is like that. And sometimes in meditation, this happens. Your perception of your physical body, you look at it, and it does change. You can see, start to realize you really are Buddha. And so that can become sensorial. That can actually happen. And it's very affirmative to think like that, even though I'm in Ken's old body. Who I really am is Buddha. And I'm going to get body after body. But my real body is this perfect manifestation in other people's minds through, all the magnificence of wonderful karma. And I think that could be helpful. You don't want to go over the top and go walking around and say, "Hey, I'm Buddha." Can't you see it? Can't you see the light? Can't you see the teeth? Whoops. So we shouldn't I mean, this does happen. We have people in Samiling who had a pure moment where they realized they saw themselves as Buddha, but then they didn't realize in the truthfulness of how all of those experiences happen. So then afterwards, they go around they're actually saying, "I am Buddha," and thinking that one experience was end of story. I'm Buddha now, and that caused some problems. Most for the people themselves.
Thank you, Ken.
You're welcome.
I learned a little bit about the list, so I knew a few signs, but and I saw some signs like that on my Google, but the one that blown me away totally. That's the usefulness. It's like, well, I had many signs and understanding that he's a Buddha, but that was one of the things that sealed it for me. Was that one time he caught my hands, he took my hands into his hands, and I was like shocked how soft they are. Not human, soft, and I imagine the field, a huge field of, wow, it's very difficult to explain, but knowing that this is what I learned and this is how it is, it was amazing. I never forget this touch. I still remember the touch.
Yeah, the touch of these, really sacred beings is so amazing, and especially if they give a hand blessing on the head,
Oh, yes.
It goes all the way through you.
Yeah, don't you feel other stuff? You feel maybe like warmth or energy or whatever. But now I'm talking about the real tactile sensation of touching the skin of the palm of the hand.
So that's amazing that even in our world, here we're looking at the 32 perfect marks of a Buddha in Sambhogakaya and that, but that some of that comes through can come through in our experience. It's incredible. It's also a very good teaching on things which are inconceivable, because we can use words to tell other people, but it never really is the same as the experience itself. It's like you said, it's not of this world. I remember Lama Lacho's skin and his arms, and it was out of this world, literally. It wasn't just soft, it wasn't just gentle and tender. There's something, it's like they say also with holy beings, there's a smell. But it's not just a nice smell. I mean, it's not just like rose or lavender or, so, smells good. Because I can splash on cologne every morning and smell quite good. But it's nothing like that. It's a smell that just takes your mind somewhere else, because at the same time it's a smell of purity.
Yeah, I experienced that even before I met my guru. Yeah. I experienced this smell in a very deep kind of sort of meditation. And I never smelled anything like that before and after. You really knew that you are in the presence of heaven. I don't know how to. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm smiling because I've had a very musical life, and I put a song to almost everything, and it's not really fair. But in the last few seconds of listening to you, I was with Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers dancing to and singing, "I'm in heaven, I'm in heaven, I'm in heaven when I take you in my arms." So, it's nice to be in heaven. Yeah. Yeah.
Ken, which was the translation of the Lotus Sutra that you liked, that you mentioned?
I think his name is Senchu Murano. Don't know if I've got it in the bookcase. No, it's something like that. Senchu Murano, something like that. It's the one that spoke to me the most. I don't know in terms. Oh, there you go. Thanks, Susan.
Thanks.
It's a nice, not just nice, a useful thing to do at one point in our journey. I suppose most of us are in sort of Vajrayana, and we've got our teachers, we do Vajrayana practice. But it's good to have a moment in your life when you read a few of these Mahayana sutras, like Lotus Sutra, Sutra of Golden Light. There are a few quite famous and nicely translated ones. They're not always easy reading. They tend to be over the top. You don't get to the point quickly. And it's they're very descriptive and long descriptions. If they talk about something, then you get a description of what's going on around, who was there, a whole list of different types of beings. And then often you get a story and then it's repeated in verse. And so they can be, they can be laborious, a bit laborious to read. But when you've gone through the whole thing and you put it down, something stays, and it's a very wonderful thing that stays. And reading a few of them gives you an idea of the Mahayana literature. So not the textbooks, not just the textbooks, but the stories and the kind of world picture of Pure Lands. There's often they talk about Pure Lands a lot, and this bodhisattva manifests, and you see how they've got special Pure Land that they're in, or that they manifest, and this one's got a different one. And you end up in this incredible world. It would be like if you'd spent a whole day looking at one Tonka after another, then kind of your imagination's in Tonka land with all those, some of them very, very beautiful. It's like that. You get this vision of the 10 bodhisattva levels and what's going on in there, not so much in a factual point-by-point way, but in a storytelling way.
Sorry, can I add something about the odor, the smell? What I also noticed with the very high lamas and those we consider, close to enlightened, if not, is that they never sweat. I mean, they sweat, but there's never any kind of smell of sweat. Even, it's India, it's super hot, and they wear all these clothes, and the light is on them, and they see, I don't know, thousands of people. There's never odor of smell. I don't remember seeing even in sweat. I don't remember even seeing sweat, but certainly there was no. And one time actually, I met someone who was praised to me by Tibetans that he's enlightened and he's this, that, and the other. And I didn't say anything, but he was sweating, he was smelling, and I said, "No way, sorry, you are wrong there."
Yeah. Gosh, there's so much to say in response to what you just said. Yeah. That's one of the qualities in general. Just when we get to Vajrayana and some of the, how can you say, the wilder, weirder side of Vajrayana, then some of the siddhas made themselves repulsive just to keep people away from them, because they didn't. They could do without disciples, and they could do without lots of things. They were there for practice and to be the teacher for one or two quite gifted people. If you look at when Mapa travelled to India, when Naropa sent him to Kukuripa, Kukuripa was far. I don't want any bad speech. I can't find an adjective, but pretty far out, maybe, let's say. And he lived inside a poisonous swamp, so it was very hard to get to him. And then when Naropa, who was this one amazingly gifted scholar, when he first got taken away from all that scholarly work and led on to meet his guru Tilopa, that was by first seeing Vajravarahi as a very, very repulsive woman. She had, what was it? I think 37 revolting signs on her, and actually kind of things. But she changed his life. She turned up in his, I have no idea what Nalanda looked like, but I imagine an Oxford college, right? And an Oxford don in his rooms in an Oxford college with his books. And so there it says Naropa was in his room studying his texts, and the one text in particular, and suddenly he sees a shadow, and he looks up, and there's this, I mean, she's really put you off, repulsive. And so, he's, what are you doing? Who are you? How'd you get in? Of course, you couldn't get into Nalanda without passing the gatekeepers and so on. And do you understand that book? And he said, yes. He said, you understand the words? Of course. You understand the meaning? And then he puts a bit of doubt. He said, well, I think so. Said, you think so? You don't know so? You think you know the meaning? And she looks absolutely disgusted. Before that, when he says, I know the meaning, when she said, do you understand the words? And she says, yes. She starts dancing around and waving her stick, and she looks really happy. Then when she asks about, do you understand the meaning? And he said, I think I do. then she looks absolutely disgusted. And so the upshot of all of that is she sends him to see what she calls my brother, who was Tilopa. And so, but then he can't get away from, they usually say Nalanda, but I think that Tibetans mix up Nalanda and Vikramasila so badly, it's terrible. Because at the time of Naropa, Nalanda was on the way down. It was really on the way out, and Vikramasila was really throbbing. But anyway, whatever it was, they wouldn't let him go because he was so venerated as a holy being. He probably smelled good, and all the rest of it. And they wouldn't let him go, so he had to act crazy. So they'd release him, which he did, and they released him. So, yeah, it is very interesting, and it's absolutely true. I've seen them, they don't sweat, they don't smell bad. Some wonderful teachers like that. Yeah.
The Tilopa was the same. He had the prophecies from a very ugly, looking like a witch woman.
Yeah. Okay, well, there we go. So we've done our dedication, and hello and goodbye to the ones I didn't say hello to personally at the beginning. And have yourselves a great week. And we're back next week with this text. And then we move into the last chapter of enlightened activity. Take care. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ken. Tirana, ciao everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.